Okay. There's that person who always talks to us. Okay. So welcome to the info session for the Fall 2022 Fellowship for Utopian Practice. So first of all, a little bit about Culture Push. So Culture Push is interested in where art will go and can go in this particular cultural moment. And that's something that since the beginning, which was in 2012, we have been thinking about. So it changes all the time. Like what we do changes all the time because the times change. And just to let you know, what is this odd image? So our digital media manager, Serbi Naik, who couldn't be here, just fed this statement into an AI, and this was the image that was generated. So it's very odd, but it's an interesting way to think about, like, these are the experiments that we like to foster. So we formed by a group of 3 artists in 2009. And we experimented, the 3 artists, I was one of them, we experimented with what Culture Push should become. And we eventually came up with, after a bunch of different experiments, with the Fellowship for Utopian Practice. And we want to connect people across disciplines and also support projects. I think this is a good way to talk about it, striving to create a much more just, open, and pleasurable world. So that's a really important part of what we're doing. And that's explicitly anti-racist, anti-ableist, and moving into a practice of care. So those are some of the principles that undergird us. So then, what is the Fellowship for Utopian Practice? So it's a testing ground for new ideas, and there's a triangle I like to talk about, which is that it's developed over time. Since all of us who began the project and who have continued to be involved in the project, we're all artists, and so we're always experimenting. So Danae is an artist, I'm an artist, Sir is an artist. But what the fellowship has become is this triangle connecting artistic practice, civic engagement, and social justice. So ideas that bring those 3 things together. So one thing we did notice back in 2012 when we started the fellowship, so it's actually our 10-year fellowship anniversary, which we just realized last month. We want to help people who are at the very beginning of an idea, because there's often not a lot of support for that, unfortunately. And also these ideas that connect those 3 things can be very complex. So we thought about what we could offer. Since we're not large and we don't have a lot of money, we can offer tools and nurture. So we offer these creative, analytical, and logistical tools and want to nurture transformative projects. So that doesn't mean they have to be enormously transformative, but that is the intention. What are you doing to transform your world? So it's open to artists and other creative folks working in any discipline. And if you want to expand the boundaries of your practice, or if you're at the very beginning of your practice, that's what it's for. And we select 3 fellows for each application cycle. And then in the fall, there's the Black Utopian Fellowship. So 1 fellow joins the Black Utopian Fellowship. And then in the spring, we have 1 fellow that's a climate justice fellow. So we started bringing in these themed fellowships as a response to what the people involved in Culture Push have wanted or needed. And that's how we've arrived here. So I'm gonna let Danae take it over from here.
Good evening, everyone. I'll give just a little bit of info before I read the slides, because the slides really say everything. The Black Utopian Fellowship came about in 2020 during the height of COVID, when America was deciding to confront racism more. It started off first with a conversation I had with the other administrators and asking to collaborate with Culture Push to create using the push-pull journal and creating an online document called Black Artist Challenge during 2020, just giving a space to Black artists to amplify their voices and share their perspective on the moment as we continue to unravel as a nation and just decide to figure out how to rally together and work with each other. But since then, we've had 2 fellows and it's been pretty interesting. It's been pretty cool. So I'll go from here. It says the Black Utopian Fellowship is an incubator fellowship created by Day One's Art in collaboration with Culture Push. Day One's Art is a collective of artists that I've worked with since 2016, creating pop-up art shows and programming around New York City. So my collective is working in collaboration with Culture Push. The BUF, Black Utopian Fellowship, is a year-long fellowship for Black artists, researchers, scientists, and inventors with career development and mentorship through a connection with Black-run institutions. The intent of the Black Utopian Fellowship is to share resources and support social engagement, educational programming, and revitalize communal hubs. This year, the theme for the fellow is social equity in the form of programming, exhibition, research, archive, and art sharing, creating systems that will be legacy in building the foundation of cultural equity and humanist change for the betterment of our world. And the prompt that I am giving the fellow or whoever decides to apply is, what ways are we considering humanity's future? The focus for each applicant will be the method in which they decide to share their projects. So if your focus is teaching or farming or art or tech or health, I believe the way that you propose your project and explain should include social equity at the premise.
Thank you, Danae.
No problem.
So logistical stuff. The deadline for applications is October 13th at 11:59 p.m. That means 1 minute before midnight. And this is culturepush.org/guidelines is where you can find all the information that is here. But we're going to go through it also. So it's open to all artists and other professionals working in any discipline who want to expand the boundaries of their practice. And this is important. It says, applicants are encouraged to review our mission. And that's true. And then also, this is really important, the specific nature of this open call. So what does that mean? It means that this is a very specific ask. This is for something that is an idea that's at its beginning and is really about collaboration with a public or a community. I'll get more into that soon. And then one of these fellowships will be working with Danae and the Black Utopian Fellowship, and that has specific questions, which we'll go through soon as well. So here is our mission. Culture Push creates programs to nurture artists and other creative people who are approaching common problems through hands-on civic participation and imaginative problem solving. So that's a pretty wide mission, and it's possible to link it in several ways. So I think the most important part is to really look carefully at the guidelines. And we were formed to create an exchange of ideas between communities, different kinds of practitioners, and that includes artists and non-artists, other kinds of creative people, but also different communities relating to each other, across neighborhoods and cultures. With the fellowship, we do encourage people to kind of find a specific community that they want to concentrate on. But we are specifically interested in creating new modes of thinking and doing. And we really cast a wide net to find as many different kinds of people as possible. So, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Okay. So this is important. Culture Push programs focus on collaboration and group learning through active participatory experiences. That's important. And it can take place anywhere in New York City. We're currently limited to the 5 boroughs, and I'll say more about that later as well. So this is our timeline. So how it goes is that we convene a panel of outside experts to do the selection. So that'll happen after the deadline. And then we reach out to references to check and see who you are, what you've done. And then we inform people. And then in November, so that should all happen by late October. Sometimes it gets a little delayed, just to let you know. In November, then we start discussing what to do and how to do it. And then from December to the next November, there's continuing support and a whole series of check-ins and a variety of things that happen. So we ask that people have at least 3 years of experience in your field. If that field is not art, that's fine. We prefer to work with people. Well, we have to work with people who have some idea of how to do a thing, because this is a fairly self-directed fellowship. And in that mode, we don't accept undergraduate students. We do accept graduate students. One of our fellows groups right now is graduate students, but we have to discuss it carefully. And we are totally fine with groups. It doesn't have to be an individual. So criteria. This is what I was talking about before. We ask that these be interactive and engage the public. And then what does that mean? That can include public talks, live interactive components, skill shares, participatory performances. And they have a clearly defined goal as a way of generating social change. That doesn't mean there can't be other components to the project, but what we're here to really help with is solve this problem, right, of how to work with community effectively, how to set up a creative space that is involved with social change. And as I said, it's a new idea. and it expands what you do. So it isn't just what you've done before, but this is an opportunity to really expand. So this means that it shouldn't be solely an exhibition or a show, but rather it's a series of events or actions that engage the public. So that doesn't mean there can't be like a performance involved as part of all of that, or an exhibition of participants. There can be all these elements, but it's really, that shouldn't be the main focus or purpose. We ask that things happen during the fellowship year. And then currently, we ask that the projects take place in the 5 boroughs of New York City. That has to do with our capacity. So it'd be very hard for us to kind of keep track of things all over the country. That doesn't mean there can't be other components. That's totally fine. But what we will be involved with is within New York City. We're working on figuring out how to expand beyond the bounds, but because of our funding also, but mostly because of capacity, and also because that's our expertise. Like, for example, both Danae and I, we were born in New York, we grew up in New York, and we're still here. And so we have connections. And Culture Push as an institution has a long history in New York City. So we can help most within New York. And if the proposal is part of a larger series or piece, then the component that works with Culture Push would be publicly engaged. Okay, nitty gritty. What do you get? So we have $2,000, which is it's an honorarium for the year, and it's distributed throughout the year at different points. So there's at the signing of the fellowship contract, after an interim report, and after a final report. And then fiscal sponsorship, which is one thing that has seemed to be very useful for a lot of people, actually. And that means that you may have access to grants and opportunities that you may not otherwise have access to, or fundraising from individuals who want to give a lot of money but would like something back, like a tax rebate. So that's what the institution is good for. The 501c3 can be helpful with these things. And then you'll have strategic meetings with the staff, and we are all, we're all dedicated to the work and also to figuring out how things work so that it can be a really useful brainstorm to work with the staff. And you have access to Materials for the Arts, which is, if you don't know about Materials for the Arts, it's this really amazing place in Queens where it's a warehouse of redirected waste. In other words, like if a fashion show puts up a big show and then they're about to throw away all that beautiful material, it actually goes to Materials for the Arts and you can get it all for free. So it's a really interesting place, especially if you work with a lot of materials. And then networking. We try to create a network between the fellows and associated artists. I'll say a little more about that later. And then we support all the fellows during their time and then afterwards, but by sharing their work and their events and their triumphs. Yeah. We also have some funding for mentorships. So this is something that we've been working on, like, is there a thought partner you want to bring in? We have specific funding set aside for that. And then we have our online journal, Push Pull. So you can edit that. And then that's mostly online, but people have already also made print copies of that, which is interesting as well. And then we have an annual symposium called Show Don't Tell, where we share work and process with the public. And then we often have exhibitions. This has been a little laid back since the pandemic, but we hope to be re-engaging with that, where we set up exhibitions of work that kind of shows what fellows have done, like a portal into the work that fellows have done. And we don't actually have a physical space. So we exist within the cloud, which is a place in a data server farm somewhere. But anyway, so, but we have a lot of experience figuring out where to do things and how to do them in these places. Okay, any questions? All clear? Okay, great. We're going to go through the application.
Oh, I do have, go
Oh,
ahead.
great. No, go ahead.
Oh, hi, good night.
Hi.
Thanks for doing this. I guess one of my questions was basically, so what does new project kind of mean here? Like, can it be a new phrase of an older project? Or like, yeah, basically. How are you defining new?
That's an interesting question, a new phase of an older project. I think that it means that you're experimenting with an idea you haven't experimented with before, so you need help in kind of developing that. So it could be a new phase of an old idea because in some ways, like, we're all working on the same old idea the whole time. But that is, yeah. So that is my answer. I think that it would be hard without seeing the application to say exactly, but that's what I would say. So if you're like, oh, I did this thing, and then I want to take a left turn, but it's related to this previous project, that seems perfectly reasonable to me.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Marissa.
Hi, I hope this isn't a silly question, especially since I'm sick, but I'm thinking about this topic or criteria of, I was trying to think of the word that you used, but solutions or answers to problems. And I think that one of the reasons that programs like this is great is that these solutions to social justice issues are often so far out of reach, and it's nice to get, to talk with other people about them or to bring in creative people to approach them differently. But, by the same logic, they're often abstract or out of reach, I guess. And so I'm just sort of wondering how literally the panel will be judging that. So will they be looking at, a disability justice related proposal, let's say, and be like, well, this one isn't going to solve the problem, or, or are they going to say, oh, this is, or will they just look at it as like, okay, this is a well thought out approach or something like that? Is that making sense? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because I don't know that I know how to solve the problems that I'm interested in, but I know that I'm interested in like problematizing the ways that they've been approached in the past and talking with people about new ways to approach them. And I have my own ways that I'm interested in approaching them, but I don't have perfect answers.
I would say that is perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we do not, and Danae, let me know if you want to say something specific, but we don't expect you to have answers. Please don't have answers. We're here to ask the question, and also what you're saying about problematizing the ways that people have approached, that's exactly right.
Yeah, I agree, Clarinda. I was getting ready to say similarly. we are actually trying to ask more questions. So we're looking for proposals that just create a foundation of like ways to answer these questions as a community, and ways to make space, like you're saying, Marissa, to try and figure out how to be best a community with each other, I believe.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. But I think that's a very good question, because I think that's sometimes what people feel the pressure to, but really just creating space for imagination is all we're looking to and asking the question.
I also wanted to say we also try to make a point to, I guess, when we're going through proposals, or when folks are applying, they can ask us questions to try and make better statements around their proposal, so it's like clear on what they're working through. We also offer feedback. As an artist applying to residencies and for grants, I don't get some, I do get some, but the ones that I don't get, I do wish they would provide feedback with what exactly they were looking for why I didn't receive the grant. So we do try to provide feedback and try to keep a community, even with folks who may have not received the fellowship right away. For the Black Utopian Fellowship, our first fellow applied to Culture Push multiple times, and he was the first Black Utopian Fellow that we had. So just trying to create ways for us to work as artists and just realize other ways of being in space.
Yes. I mean, that's a funny thing, but we try to create community with people who don't receive. That's what we call our emails, that for the people who don't get the fellowship. Not this time. We don't call them rejection emails, for not this time, because if you're interested in Culture Push and what happens in Culture Push, you're kind of you're part of the community. Thank you, Danae, for putting everything so beautifully. That was great. Okay, any more questions? This is so fruitful. Thank you all. Okay. Again, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat, and then we'll pause again at the end for any spoken questions that people want to share. I know spoken questions can be really nerve-wracking, so please feel free to use the chat. I always get really scared when I'm about to ask a question in by voice. Okay, so here's the application questions. They're fairly straightforward. Whoops. So project summary. We're just asking you to tell us in 50 words or less, so we have a clear summary of what your idea is, what your project will hope to do. And then the project narrative, it should describe the project fairly, and we know it's a proposal. We understand that it's not a description, right? It's not a project description because you haven't done the project yet. It's a proposal. So we welcome your proposal, but it can be specific. Like if you have ideas about how you want to do the thing you want to do, that may not be what you end up doing at all, but that's okay. It helps us to understand how you think and how you're thinking through the problem. We need your CV to understand a little bit about who you are and what you've done. There is no judgment. If you have a tiny CV, that's fine. We're just curious about who you are and what you've done. And you're not rewarded for having a lot of experience or punished for having a lot of experience. It's just information. I've never said that before, and it's probably a good thing to say. So for accessibility, we offer a possibility for a written narrative, or also an audio or video narrative, if that's necessary. So some people are great writers, some people are great talkers, some people have great gestures. So all of that is great. And then 500 words maximum, so that the panel doesn't have to go through too much, right? And then audio, video narrative, 5 minutes. And you can actually say a lot in 5 minutes. And then we have, you'll see on our application, there's specific places for you to submit these. Oops. Oh. Okay. So work samples. 5 images, or audio and/or audio video. And because of the limitations of our system, 20 megabytes, or you can use a link to a web page if that's helpful. So this is another interesting question, Mike. Work samples. Usually when you're applying to something, it's like, this is the thing I'm going to do, and here's some things that are like the thing I'm going to do. So it's similar to that, but we also understand, again, that it's a proposal. So you may have not done anything like this ever, and that's fantastic. But just show the best work samples you have that are as related as you can be to this particular project. It doesn't have to be, and you can also send a sketch or a rendering of the specific project that you're proposing. So it doesn't have to be really a fantastic work sample. It should just give us a sense of what you've done that relates. Okay, let's answer right now, because this is a complex one. Yes, Catherine.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for this info session. For the work samples, what popped into my head is it's not really graphic notes, but it's just like a page I have of related phrases and words that are kind of getting at the idea. It's really useful for me. I don't know if it will translate to other people, but I think it could be a good work sample. So what do you think of that?
That's interesting. It couldn't hurt. I agree that could be really useful, right? Because there's, we're getting a sense of your thoughts and the way you're presenting your thoughts. Danae?
Yeah.
I agree. I feel that if it's like a key to understanding how you're communicating your idea, then it is purposeful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's good. Thank you for asking that question, because I definitely think it's okay to think outside the box when you think about work samples for this.
Cool. Thank you.
So that will help other people as well. Great. So here's some examples that are interesting because they're so simple. So this is Simone Johnson, who was one of our first climate justice fellows. And this is one of her work samples. And it's just this simple photo, but the way she contextualizes it really helped us understand what she wanted to go forward and do. So it was more like her writing about this specific documentation, which helped us say, okay, and there were other samples that were similar, fairly simple, but the contextualizing was really important. So that's an important thing to know, is that contextualizing your work sample can be really helpful. Don't write pages, just a paragraph or a couple sentences, but I think that will help a lot. And here are a few others that were really helpful. So for example, Angela Miskis, she had already a project called Abuela Neighborhood Maintenance, and her, so she shared documentation of that project, even though the project that she was describing was related, but actually quite like a different project. So that kind of answers the question that you had, Chiara, pardon my pronunciation. But that, you know, this was kind of a left turn off Abuela Neighborhood Maintenance. And then Cody Herman, another climate justice fellow, was talking about specifically, so this documents what she calls brownfield boating, where she takes people out on the Flushing Creek in Queens, which is a very polluted creek, but she talked about what is happening in that photo. And there's more from Simone, just a little sketch, but again, the context helps. And then Blessing was another climate justice fellow, and they shared with us their previous documentation of a performance they had done. So all of these really helped us understand what's going on. So we do need to continue with the questions. We do need a reference, one professional reference, someone who's worked with you in some capacity. So we understand, because we as the staff will be working very closely with the fellow. And so we do need somebody to vouch, so we understand what we're getting into. And then we now have this associated artist program. We've had it for a little while now, and we've actually started to be able to fund it a bit, but it is, so what happens is that there are some projects that may not seem exactly right for the fellowship, but they're really excellent and seem like they would benefit from Culture Push support. And we ask people if they want to be part of the Associated Artists program. And you receive a lot of what the fellow receives, but you would be an associated artist would be someone who is at a slightly advanced part of their proposal, like of their project. They're not right at the beginning, or they suddenly have a lot of resources, but they could really use like the institutional framework. So from the fellows, we ask if you would be interested in being an associated artist if you don't actually get the fellowship itself. And then there are a few other questions just to kind of round it out. Like, we want to know how you heard about it and how you generally fund, just so we have a sense of your experience with funding and anything else. So then here are a few frequently asked questions. So it's a year, right? That's the year. However, it doesn't necessarily have to end in a year, because we understand that the way that these things go is very unpredictable. So we offer an option for extension. And also, as it says here, like, we want to create sustainable working strategies, and sometimes that takes a little longer, in which case, and then also we often form long-term relationships with fellows that come and go. So one of our favorite kind of examples of that would be the Free Black Women's Library. And Ola, the woman who started that, she participated in a Culture Push Fellowship in 2014. And then we kept in touch, and she just kept growing and growing and growing. And now she has a storefront where she keeps the library. But we have continued to be your fiscal sponsor, be your thought partner, kind of talk about how to go forward depending on what she was going through. And that's almost 9 years now, which blows my mind, but there you go. So do you have to live in New York? No, you don't have to live in New York City, but everything you're doing has to take place in New York City. So we have had people who live on Long Island or New Jersey who do projects in New York City, and they work great. So we understand the realities of housing, in this metro area. So we're not going to punish somebody because they have to get a house in Jersey City. Well, actually, I don't know. That might be really expensive now, but in another place. Okay, Danae, take it away.
So if you're applying for the Black Utopian Fellowship, there will be other questions in the, I guess the queue. I think we skipped one, or no? Yeah. Are you applying is the first question for the Black Utopian Fellowship. You would say yes.
Because that, just to say, that reveals all the other questions. So it's important.
Sorry, just gotta grab some water.
Take your time.
Then we ask what your intended focus for the CP Black Utopian Fellowship, just to get a better understanding of who we can have be another point of contact to aid you through your project. So that's teaching, farming, art and tech, mental health, performance, storytelling, archival studies, sciences, education, infrastructure, economics, or other, just to aid in having knowledge with who to tie the fellow with in our Rolodex. How would you define social equity? Do you feel artists have a social responsibility to incorporate pedagogy into their practice? How would you want to work in a fellowship that connects to institutions? And these questions are also just to get more information about the person who's applying and to understand the intention of their project, really.
Would you say there's a right answer, or are these just information?
No, there's no right answer to these questions. They're just more of a way of getting to understand who's applying and how to actively work with them. It doesn't have to be 100 words. It can be shorter than 100 words. Just really, I guess these questions are more kind of like a focus group, I would say, to really understand who I will be facilitating and aid them in really pointing them in the direction of what their needs are. More questions are, what Black organizations would you like to work with? Where do you generally draw inspiration from? What generally are your sources of funding for your projects? If not selected for the Black Utopian Fellowship, would you like to be considered for the Fellowship for Utopian Practice? So if your project is not considered for the BUF, that doesn't mean your project will be dismissed. If you press this, it'll also be put into the pool of the overall fellowship program.
Okay. Anything you want to add about any of those questions, or?
I just would want the applicant to answer them with ease, not like, don't feel too feel too challenged by them. I just want you to, I know the meat of what will be happening will be identified in your proposal, but I really want to be able to aid the fellow in aligning them with other folks if I don't have all of the answers. So that's about it. I don't think I have anything else, but if you guys have other questions, feel free to let me know or email me. I can put my email in the chat.
Great, yes, we will do that. We will also put other information in the chat for sure.
Oh, I did forget. Because I also have a space now. So I'm going to be willing to have in-person meetings at a space in Brooklyn if the person is available to meet in real life. Yeah.
Super exciting.
Yeah, that's a plus for us right now.
Thank you. So do you all have more questions after going through the nitty-gritty of the application? Everything's perfectly clear. Yay. Okay, great. So I will put this in the chat as well. If that's helpful. If you have any questions, and that's you and anybody watching this recording, just send them to cp@culturepush.org. And again, you can see the guidelines. Thank you for your comments, everybody. Slash guidelines. Oh, I'm glad it seems fairly simple. That's great. We try. We want it to be simple. Yes. We want to make this process accessible to as many different kinds of people as possible. So we are always open to feedback on the application itself, by the way. So if, as you're going through, if you feel confused or there's something you're like, what if this did this instead? That would be, we're always happy to hear that. So if anybody you know wants to come to one of these info sessions, we have one more, and that's Saturday, October 1st at noon, and we'll do the same thing. Thank you so much for attending. It's really helpful to many people to have you and your questions here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll say goodbye. Oh, Danae, stay on for a minute.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Okay, hold on, let me stop recording for a second.